Coreless Cultivator, Chapter 6. I'm Michael Taggart, and this is the author's cut. In your case, you are physically just 12 years old. The last thing I want to do is stress your body too much and cause permanent injury. I nodded that I could take more. Are you sure? The god asked. You're already at a fairly high level. Yes, I said confidently. My body doesn't feel any different, and my healing ability is inactive. I don't think I've done any tempering yet. As you wish, Method said and raised his hand yet again. My legs started to tremble slightly. The chi wasn't burning, though. Instead, it felt good, like my body was soaking it up. More, I demanded. Method raised his hand even more. Now it was starting to burn. My arms started shaking too. I still didn't feel like my body had changed yet. More, I demanded again. The god complied. Now my entire body was shaking, and for the first time, my healing technique kicked in. I wondered if I had automatically turned it on. I didn't think so. I turned it off, but the healing technique kicked right back on again. It sucked in all that powerful chi and pushed out a healing wave to my whole body. The burn vanished, and I felt like I could do this all day. Unfortunately, that was the exact opposite of what I needed. I needed to stress my body and break it down, not enjoy a day at the spa. More, I said. My healing technique is interfering. The god looked like he wasn't going to do it until I glared at him. Then he reluctantly raised his hand even higher. Now, the level of chi could only be described as intense. My body trembled and shook, and I was almost losing control over it. The burn was real. It was a fire, racing through my physical self. Unfortunately, all that chi was also fueling my healing technique. It had activated at a level I hadn't felt before, and it was keeping pace with the burn. I thought about asking for more, but that didn't seem like a good solution. My innate healing technique would just increase and counter the tempering. It was difficult to think, and I was awash in feelings, so I closed my eyes and mentally dove into my body. I was starting to progress from trembling to full-on shaking. Before it got much worse, I needed to solve this problem quickly. The first thing I noticed was that the burn was winning. It wasn't quick, but my body was starting to wear down. That was a good thing, but I still didn't feel like I was tempering. I'd spent a lot of time examining my young body and willing it to change, so I knew what it felt like. My muscles, my bones, everything still felt the same. Sure, it was under stress right now, but given time, my healing technique would just reset everything back to my normal 12-year-old self. That couldn't happen. I reached for an answer, and I felt something. I wasn't sure what it was, but it felt like a clue. It whispered to me, but with my body shaking and the massive flow of chi, it was difficult to understand anything. The harder I reached, the more the solution eluded me. I chased it, but it would not be caught. It was like when I walked into a room, but couldn't remember why I was there. Finally, I just stopped and let my awareness float inside me. My body was a battleground. The forces of tempering and healing fought for control. They both wanted me, and suddenly I had my answer. The problem wasn't my body. Sure, it was underdeveloped, but it was healthy. The problem wasn't the burn. Broken Method was stressing me like he'd promised. The problem was my healing technique. It was too good, and most of all, it had its own idea of what was best for me. In order to advance my innate ability, and I needed to have a little chat. We needed to straighten a few things out. Normally, this would have been weird, and even impossible to do, but I was now in an altered meditative state, and anything seemed doable. I oriented towards the source of my innate ability and flew closer. What I felt surprised and shocked me. My healing ability was deeply worried and very scared. It was feeling like everything depended on its competence, and it was frantic with alarm. It was trying to hold everything together, doing the best it knew how, but it was certain it was losing to the burn, losing its ability to hold my age back, losing its ability to hold me together without a core. It was heartbreaking, and I quickly wrapped my ability with all the love and acceptance I had inside me. Shh, I whispered. You are going to be okay. We are going to be okay. A small part of me thought it was strange I was basically comforting myself, but a larger part of me didn't care. My innate ability cried on my shoulder as I hugged it close and gave it a moment to let it all out. Shh, I whispered again, and I felt a part of myself I'd never noticed before ease up. I'd been on edge for so long, worried and uncertain of how my life was going to be. Those feelings had soaked into my body until I carried a dense knot of anxiety. Now I was at the source of the problem. I was able to consciously unravel it. I was able to let it go. "Thank you for trying so hard," I whispered mentally. "I know I've needed you to be there for me, but we have a God now. We have a plan. We have a new path to walk. Let go of the past, and we will walk the future together." The plan, the tempering, flowed into my healing ability, and its knowledge flowed back. It was capable of much more than just healing. I glimpsed a whole spectrum of possible abilities. With this new understanding, it was simplicity itself to formulate a new action. My innate ability shut down its healing, and for a moment, the god's chi ran rampant through my body. Then my innate technique came alive again and sucked in all the power like it was a black hole. It pulled in more and more until I felt like I was going to explode. And then I did. The power surged out of me, touching every part of my body. It was burning and healing mixed together, and it finally changed me. My body cried out in agony and ecstasy. I felt a part of me unfurl and stretch, like a seed breaking out of its protective shell. I surrendered to the process as the tempering took hold. My bones softened like wax, and then reformed, sturdier than before. My eyes flexed, and somehow came back stronger and more responsive. My muscles and ligaments burned, and grew back faster and more flexible. I had a moment to realize I probably hadn't actually melted and reformed. It just felt that way, but I was now sure I had tempered. "Stop!" I cried out, as the god's chi was still burning me. Then it all became too much, and I passed out. I awoke to the comforting feeling of being gently rocked in my mother's arms. She was humming a simple tune and holding me close to her, like she did when I was a child. I wasn't a child anymore, but the feeling was so comforting and pleasant that I didn't want to open my eyes and return to reality. Instead, I snuggled closer and pretended to still be asleep. I heard a gentle chuckle and felt a kiss on my forehead. I luxuriated in the feeling of being loved, but it occurred to me that my mother's chuckle was a lot deeper than it normally was. Maybe she had a cold or something. Actually, my mother had gotten a lot stronger than I remembered. When had she gained all these muscles? Maybe this was Dad? Curious, I opened my eyes and beheld the most beautiful face I'd ever seen. The person's eyes were crinkled in good humor, highlighting his long lashes, and his perfect lips were stretched with a grin. Even his perky nose looked happy somehow. The face was the flawless mix of beautiful and handsome, and I found I couldn't look away. Instead, I stared at the person who was clearly not my mother. I didn't even blink, in case this was some weird hallucination. Instead, I drank in the sight before me and tried not to breathe. "How is my little peapod?" the man said playfully as he brushed a stray hair out of my face. "This guy is divine," I thought. "Even his breath smells like mint." Wait, this guy really was divine. Suddenly it all came back to me, meeting my new God, finding my new path as a body cultivator, tempering for the first time, and now I was lying in his arms like a young child. I wasn't sure if I was ashamed and should leap to my feet, or if I wanted to stay right where I was and enjoy being cuddled a little longer. I felt so peaceful. I decided to stay snuggled up. After all, my mother wasn't around to hold me like this anymore. A yawning, dark chasm of grief opened up inside me at the thought, but I breathed through it and let it pass. I wasn't going to bawl like a baby in the god's arms. That just didn't seem right. I couldn't stop a few tears from leaking out my eyes, and the beautiful god gently wiped them away. He didn't stop rocking me, though, and it still felt safe and warm. "How are you feeling?" the god asked. For the first time, I turned my attention to my body. It felt different. Then the significance of that hit me. It felt different. "I feel like I've started to sprout," I said, remembering how I'd felt my confinement fade away. Then I realized this had no real context and started to explain. The god just nodded, though, like that made perfect sense. "Do you feel too different?" Method asked. "Like, do you feel a radical change inside you?" I turned my attention back to my body again. I felt amazingly good, like I'd had a good night's sleep and woken up fully rested. "I feel strong," I reported. Not like crazy strong, but certainly stronger than I have in a long time. So, you feel like you could walk across the room okay? The god continued. That seemed like an odd question. Why wouldn't I be able to walk? I think so, I replied. I feel better than before, but I don't feel weird or anything. Good, Method said happily. We'll test how you do in a moment. For now, just relax and let your body acclimate a little more. We still have a few things to talk about. Okay, I replied. Being held by a beautiful god was a lovely feeling. I was happy to stay there for as long as the god wanted me to. You've managed to do something unusual, the god continued, so let's spend a moment talking about the early levels of body cultivation and what to expect. I nodded to show I was listening. The first stage of body cultivation isn't really a stage at all, Method said. It's called the baby stage for obvious reasons, and most cultivators gently temper out of it around age 10. Usually the young cultivator gets sick and has a fever or gets an injury of some sort, and the body tempers. In most cases, the cultivator doesn't even notice that anything has changed. You, of course, are very familiar with this stage. The god chuckled and waved his hand like it was just a passing concern. I chuckled with him to keep the mood light and encourage the god to continue talking. It certainly hadn't been sunshine and roses for me, though. Instead, it had been years of uncertainty and torment, as everyone around me kept growing while I had stopped. The next stage is wooden, and that is where I expected you to end up today, Method said. It has 10 levels, and they are all about transitioning from a child to a young adult. Balance, strength, awareness, and accuracy are all things you need to work on as your body changes and grows. The stage beyond that is stone, also called the warrior body. That's because this is the stage where you craft or fight like a man. Your senses, reflexes, and recovery are excellent. This is also considered a natural stage, in that spiritual cultivators who push themselves and have solidified their wooden body can have an event that naturally causes the transition. Usually, this involves a fight where they get badly injured, or maybe they are an artisan that causes something to explode. Here, let me show you an example of the two stages. The god gestured, and suddenly an image of a naked man stood before us. The man looked normal, and I wouldn't have thought very much about his body cultivation if we had passed him on the street. Then the image changed, and suddenly the man was more. It wasn't a huge change, but now he stood taller and stronger. His eyes seemed more aware, and he looked more like a leader. This man would be the first in a squad of hunters, or the lead craft worker at a job site. Understand? Method asked, and I nodded. Method let the image fade as he continued. Well, what makes your tempering so different is that you leveled straight from a baby body to a stone body. What? I exclaimed as I fully sat up. Then I jumped to my feet and looked at myself. I was still the scrawny 12-year-old I had always been. I looked nothing like the stone cultivator the god had shown. I know, Method said as he also got to his feet. It is a mystery to me too. Skipping levels is not something I've heard about. I'll have to ask the other gods and see if they know something I don't. I gave myself a pat down, just to make sure this wasn't some sort of illusion. Yep, I was the same size and shape as before, although I felt I had a lot more energy. The standard practice for cultivators after reaching a new level is to focus on solidifying their newfound abilities. This is similar to spiritual cultivation, in that the newly tempered core needs time to heal and settle into its new density or shape. For body cultivators, they normally spend at least a year getting used to their new bodies before they start pushing the boundaries of what they can do. At higher levels, they may spend decades solidifying their gains. I don't think I have any real gains yet, I noted. So what do I do now? I think you should keep going down the same path as if you had just leveled up to wooden body, the god said. You need to give your body time to catch up to its potential. I still think you should train, of course, as there are a lot of things you can still improve on while you're waiting. Remember, you're a body cultivator now, so get creative in training all the physical and mental aspects of your new power. Strength and speed are obvious, of course, but don't forget balance, awareness, accuracy, and perception. You're going to a school, so I'm sure there will be courses you can take there that will enhance your abilities even more than you could on your own. Probably the best thing you could do for the next few months, even more than training, is eating. Your body is going to start growing again, and it is going to need the basic nutritional building blocks to do that. After all, you can't grow with chi alone. Broken Method laughed, then paused thoughtfully. Actually, you can, but that is somewhere much farther down your path. For now, let's update your status and move on. I heard a pleasant chime, and an ornate status window appeared before me. Alric Core, you have transcended your previous cultivation level and have obtained a new rank. Congratulations, you have ranked up from Baby Body to Wooden Body, Level 1. Furthermore, you have ranked up a second time from Wooden Potential to Stone Potential. Since you are physically unable to progress to Stone Body, Level 1, your effective rank is still Wooden Body, Level 1. How your Stone Potential will affect your current growth is unknown. You will have to grow and find out for yourself. I read the status and then read it again. It didn't convey any new insights, but the act of receiving one was extraordinary. My friends had gotten them, and they had even shared some with me, but getting my own was so much better. Having written confirmation of my progression was groundbreaking. I wasn't sure this day would ever come. I'd hoped for it, but privately I'd started to wonder if I would ever change. I read it a few more times just to savor the feeling, before I finally acknowledged it and let it fade away. I looked around to find my god giving me a bemused smile. "It's nice to see improvement, isn't it?" The god smiled. "Yes," I replied. It was only one word, but somehow it expressed all the emotions flowing through me. "Well then, let's keep going. Shall we?" Method said brightly. "Let's do it!" I exclaimed, my enthusiasm shining through as I pushed aside my other emotions. "I'm ready for whatever comes next." Method clapped his hands, and the entire room changed. The furniture melted back into the floor, along with all the other decorations. The floor changed to a massive flat brown mat that was mainly solid but provided a bit of give. The walls went next, showing the brown mat extending off into the distance. Finally, the ceiling disappeared, replaced by a cloudy sky. Method clapped his hands again, and a row of stones appeared, each of them looking larger and heavier. Right beside each stone was a pedestal with the top about chest high. Beyond that was a set of marble stairs that led up to a platform about twice my height, and then the stairs led back down to the brown mat again. Beyond that, there was a long segment of wood that came out of the ground, and then more and more strange contraptions took shape after that. It all looked fascinating, but I could already see a problem. "I can't wait to do whatever you have in mind here," I said, "but we need to keep track of the time. I need to meet up with the other orphans, and I can't be late. I don't want to be left behind." "You don't have to worry about that," Method said firmly. "Time passes differently here, so we can accomplish everything we need to before you go back. We will be done here in plenty of time to meet with your fellow students. You won't be left behind. I promise you." I nodded and relaxed. If Broken Method said I would be on time, then I was going to take him at his word. After all, if I couldn't trust my god, then who could I trust? Method walked forward and motioned at the first challenge. "This test is very simple. You need to pick up the stone before each pedestal and place it on the top. The first one is small and should be easy for you, but as you progress, they will get more difficult. Understand?" "Yes," I replied. "I'm probably going to get tired doing this, so should I use my healing ability, or should I try to turn it off and count this as training?" "We're trying to create a baseline for your abilities," Method replied, "so use your healing ability and any other advantage you have. I'm glad you're thinking about training, though. In the regular world, you'll want to turn everything you do into training to advance as quickly as possible. You have a lot of catching up to do. Now let's begin. Put the first rock on the pedestal." I picked up the first rock and easily placed it on top of the pedestal. It was flat, like a creek rock, and only about the size of my fist. The whole thing was so simple and easy that I wondered why the god had started here. "I am the god of broken cultivators," Method laughed, answering my unspoken question. "Not everyone that comes to me has hands or even arms. For some people, even lifting a small stone like that is a huge challenge." Feeling slightly ashamed, I nodded and hurried to the next pedestal. I didn't have a core, and I was stuck in a younger body, but I still had plenty of advantages. Determined to be more grateful, I lifted the larger rock and settled it on its pedestal. I continued down the line, lifting larger and larger rocks until they were the size of a large sack, and that is where my success ended. The rock was too heavy, and even though I healed myself and struggled with all my might, I just couldn't lift it higher than a few inches off the ground. I backed away in defeat as another status window flashed before me. Congratulations! You have unlocked a new attribute, Strength. Based on your performance so far, your Strength rating is 4.2. Since this is a new attribute for you, you should know that an average 16-year-old person with normal abilities and normal cultivation would have a Strength score of 10. You are well below average on this stat, but the good news is that raising your Strength performance is fairly straightforward. I felt a thrill of excitement. Another status message. Today was going to be full of them. Even if the message wasn't that great, and the 4.2 just showed how far I was behind an average person, it was still exciting to finally have something happen. Besides, I knew I was below average anyway. It wasn't telling me anything I didn't already know, and I wasn't going to get down about it. I swiped the message away to find Method looking at me intently. "All right?" Method asked. "All right," I said confidently. "What's next?" This concludes this episode of Michael Taggart Mythic Tales. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.